your manager wants to hear from you. And so if you're in a virtual meeting or in an in-person meeting and you're kind of quiet, you're not really adding value, that's noticed. As a manager, I want to make sure that my team's engaged, and when I'm speaking, that they're listening, but they're also adding value. They're responding to what I'm saying. If I give out a project, they're working on that project and they're giving me updates on how that project's going, when that project will be completed, and then any roadblocks that they come across. And so it's being very vocal. It's not being silent and you don't know what you're working on and you just don't hear from that person. You have to speak up. You have to make sure that you're, whether you're texting, calling, emailing, or slacking, your line manager all the time, giving them updates on what you're working on.
Welcome to Grow Think Tank. This is the one and only place where you will get insight from the founders and the CEOs of the fastest growing privately held companies. I am the host. My name is Gene Hammett. I help leaders and their teams navigate the defining moments of their growth. Are you ready to grow?
Today, we're going to talk about career growth, and specifically for your employees. How can you encourage them to be better employees, to go beyond expectations and beyond their responsibilities, to truly deliver value to the organization, but also to grow? We have the author of Grow, Randy Ornstein. His wife, Haley, could not make it today, but we were able to talk to Randy about the 10 tips inside this. Now, we didn't unpack all the 10 tips, but we went deeper into a couple of them so that you get a feel for what this book is about. What I really like about our conversation is both of the things that we looked at. One was speak up and the other was use data appropriately. Inside of our organizations, we know that there's people that aren't doing this very well. They're either being too quiet, they're not asking questions, they're not engaging, and that has the perception of not being engaged, maybe not listening. And so he's encouraging you, if you want to be promoted as an employee, to speak up. And I know every leader would love for their people to speak up and really speak more elegantly, and maybe it's just ask better questions and really help us connect the dots. That can be another way of speaking up. But the point is, don't just keep your mouth shut, speak up. The other part we talked about was data. I'm a big data fan. I don't know if it's the engineer in me or just the logical way my brain works, but I've got spreadsheets for nearly everything and I love data. But not many people use data very well inside their jobs. And so Randy, our author, talks about how to be better at using data, when you should use it, how you should use it. And we don't get into the actual Excel spreadsheets and pivot tables. We did talk about some of those things after the recording, but what you want to take away from this book is that employees want to grow. Your job as a manager is to help them do that. Set expectations. There's right in the beginning, there's a great question I ask, and I'm going to highlight it for you here because I want you to listen for it. He is sitting down with new team members and he's going over these tips and sharing with them how that applies to their job and getting their commitment up front. Think about that, the power of that, setting a powerful expectation for you as an employee. If you want a promotion in 2 years, here's what we expect of you. The clearer that is, the more likely you are to connect with that person. If they don't want to do the work to get that promotion, then it's on them. Maybe they're not right for the job, but your job as a leader is to set those expectations and have the kind of conversations up front. And Randy talks about that in our conversation today. My name is Gene Hammett. I'm an executive coach. We do manager coaching where we help managers become leaders. We do cultural transformations within companies that are in fast growth. All of these companies that are in fast growth are dealing with a certain amount of chaos and drive, and that causes issues. We come in, we support you with new ways of thinking, new ways of doing, new ways of operating from the CX level throughout the organization down to the managers. And so we've done this for years. We're happy to help you. If you want to tune in to some work that we've got coming up, you can do this. You can be a fly on the wall or you can participate, but we invite guests that have been on the show. We also invite other prospects like yourself, if you're listening to this right now, to come into our executive virtual conversations. We do these once a month. The topic changes. This next one is how to have tough conversations. And so in June, you'll be able to learn a little bit more about tough conversations. It's the next book that I'm writing with my wife, Amanda. So if you want to come into that, we've got some special things planned and you can just kind of be a fly on the wall, or you can ask questions and participate. Go to coreelevation.com/virtual conversations. Find out when the next one is. You do have to register, but it's absolutely free. Look forward to seeing you there. Now, here's the interview with Randy. Randy, how are you?
I'm doing great. How are you? Thanks for having me on the show.
I am awesome. We're happy to have you here. We're going to talk about your book, Grow. Before we dive into the book and that topic, tell us about you, Randy.
Yeah, I'm a 23-year vet in the beverage industry. Spent my career at Anheuser-Busch, first 18 years working there across many different avenues. I worked across category and space management, living in Bentonville, Arkansas, on our Walmart team. I then led category management for all of national grocers like Kroger and Target and Safeway. And then I led our Walmart and Sam's Club business as VP of sales. I had the pleasure of launching Tivana Iced Tea, a partnership with Starbucks and Anheuser-Busch. And then I led our Beyond Beer division at AB and spent, many years growing in that company. In the last 5 years, I've been at GoPuff, on-demand delivery service, living in Philly now, and leading their beverage merchandising team across GoPuff, BevMo, and Liquor Barn, two liquor chains that we have acquired over the years.
Fantastic. So you've got a lot of experience in beverages, and you probably also have a lot of experience on what it takes to be a good employee and to lead other employees to the place they want to be. And so you felt like you had to write a book. How did that come about? That idea of like, let's be authors.
Yeah, it was a long idea. So at Anheuser-Busch, we had this sales development training program where we hired roughly 30 college graduates that would then join a 6-month training program. And then at the end of that program, there was usually a small graduation. And I was asked to give a keynote speech periodically. This is like a 10-minute speech to these graduates that are about to get their full-time job at AB. And I usually would just showcase one slide of like, here's 5 tips that I learned how to grow at Anheuser-Busch. And one would be here, data is power. And here's how I use data effectively. And one was use a sense of urgency. And that happened in the early, mid to late 2000s. Over the years, I would see some of those kids at different happy hours or events, and they would say, Randy, I still remember those 5 tips that you shared like 5 years ago. And that happened numerous times. And I decided I need to make my tips longer. And now I had 10 tips. And then every time a new team member would join my team, I would go over those tips. Or if I joined a new department, I would go over those tips. And then just so happened one day I was driving from New Jersey to Philly to work with one of our Anheuser-Busch wholesalers. And that's how I get ideas when driving. And I'm like, I should broadcast this now out to the world. And that was about mid 2016 or so. And I started writing down formal tips. I took a train from New Jersey into New York City where I was working. It would literally write the book on my train ride every morning for about a year when I was at Anheuser-Busch. And I wanted the audience to figure out like what they needed to do to move up the corporate ladder. Whether you're a graduate that's just entering the workforce and you wanted an extra edge, or you're someone that's been working in the same job for a few years and you're kind of stuck and you don't know if you'll move up to the next level, or you're a manager that has employees and you want to make sure that your employees are stronger. I wanted this book to speak to those 3 parties on tips to grow and accelerate your career.
I want to pick out something in there that you said that you glossed over, and I think it's really important. It's great that you have the tips, but you're sitting down with new team members and you're reviewing it with them, making sure they're in alignment and setting expectations around these tips. I imagine that's paid off in spades.
Exactly. It's really important to have those deep conversations with your team on what's working, what's not, and really try to get to the next level. And so I would always use my own experiences with them of like, here's what I did for a similar situation, or I'd come up with a situation as we're talking there. Uh, and and I think it's important to keep honing into that, checking in with that person, after you've met with them to make sure that what we said actually was accomplished.
Now, Randy's been talking about reviewing the tips with a new team member. Now, what I call this is an upfront agreement. You want to make sure that you're setting expectations powerfully. Your job is to lead others and to create a good employee experience. You want to make sure you have the best way to excel at this job. It may be the tips that Randy's talked about. It may be your own tips. Maybe you take time to figure out what works best within your team and the organization. Share those up front, get buy-in early, and use them throughout your conversations and development of those employees to reinforce those things of what makes a great employee. You will have more people on track for promotion and less people who think they deserve a promotion, but they really don't. So that's my 2 cents. Hopefully that helps you. Back to Randy. What are the biggest mistakes that employees are making these days? I think things are changing. So I'm just curious, can you go over 1 or 2 mistakes that you feel like people just aren't aware of it? Maybe it's blind spots even.
Yeah, I think that your manager wants to hear from you. And so if you're in a virtual meeting or in an in-person meeting and you're kind of quiet, you're not really adding value, that's noticed. As a manager, I want to make sure that my team's engaged, and when I'm speaking, that they're listening, but they're also adding value. They're responding to what I'm saying. If I give out a project, they're working on that project and they're giving me updates on how that project's going, when that project will be completed, and then any roadblocks that they come across. And so it's being very vocal. It's not being silent and you don't know what you're working on and you just don't hear from that person. You have to speak up. You have to make sure that you're whether you're texting, calling, emailing, or slacking, your line manager all the time, giving them updates on what you're working on. And I think that's missed a lot. I have half the people on my team that I only talk to them when I have a scheduled one-on-one. And then I have others that are literally checking with me throughout the day.
And what do you think is best for employees? Is it to overdo this? Like, I don't mean like be annoyance, but
Yeah.
underdoing it actually doesn't work, right?
Yeah, you definitely don't want to, there's a balance for sure. Underdoing it is worse than overdoing it, because at least when you're overdoing it, your boss will say, "Hey, all right, I got it. Here's the ways of working." But underdoing has the mentality that maybe you are not working at all.
Yeah. So that's one big mistake. And I'm glad you brought that to light. Any other mistakes that you feel like we should cover before we move on?
I think we all work within data. In my job, I'm constantly looking at the performance of drinks and alcohol for my business across the country. I'm seeing which brands are growing, which brands are declining. And it's important that no matter who you are, you're constantly looking at your own performance to see what's working, what's not, and then making sure that you're showcasing that you know your business when you're talking to your team, to your boss, to your management. I'm a big proponent of using data to be effective. And when you sell into retailers, as an example, as a CPG supplier, you should be using data effectively to get that yes, and go beyond just, oh, my item is selling amazing. Well, what does that mean? How is it performing versus your competitors? Is it going to be incremental to what that retailer is already carrying? What's the price point? Going deeper into why that item's successful versus just glossing over, like, you have to take this item, it's doing great. And I see that a ton from our suppliers. They just don't know how to use data effectively to basically get the yes.
Love both of those. I want to switch gears, Randy. You wrote this book. You have to organize your thoughts and get them out there. And I'm sure there's things that don't make the book and whatnot, but there's also some things that are sort of surprises. And what I love to hear, and I want to pull out of you, is what is the simplest thing that's in the book that if someone did it, they could get a win before they even bought the book? And if they get the win, hopefully they're going to want to go buy it because they want to hear more from you. What is that simple win that you could share with us today?
Yeah, the book is divided into 2 major sections. The first 5 chapters is more about everyday excellence, how to just be a star employee. And then the second 5 chapters is going above and beyond and how to be above us, then taking it to the next level. So I think if you look at the first section, some simple things is speaking up. If I want to be as simple as possible, you're on a Zoom call with 10 other people, speak up, ask a question. If your boss is like asking questions about things, you answer it. Make a note in the chat. If you're in person, raise your hand, speak up, just be noticed. Don't just be someone that's just sitting there silent. I think speaking up is literally the easiest thing you could do, even if you're agreeing with someone or disagreeing with someone, not even posing a question, but just making a comment.
I like the question too, because maybe you don't have something to add that's like a creative idea,
Right.
but a clarifying question I think is really important because if you can connect the dots for yourself, maybe even unlocks it for someone else. Because if they're afraid to ask the question, you're thinking it, they're probably thinking it too. So use of questions, I think, is a really good one. Give us something from the next level. I'm really curious around that part of the book. If an
Yeah.
employee goes, I really want to get promoted, what would you point them to in the next level part of the book?
It's all about creating best practices. And so I constantly tell my team, when you leave your job, hopefully you left it in a better place. So when that new employee goes in that job, that job is already elevated. And so I talk about like going above and beyond your job description. So you have your job, here's all the duties and responsibilities that you do, but what else could you do to save the company time, money, or resources? And so I have a Friday call with the team. It's typically more of a creative call. We're team bonding, team building. And I'm constantly asking the team to share best practices, things that they created that would move the needle sizably. And so this could be combining 3 Excel reports into one, or it could be a lot more advanced where it's like 3 to 6 months where it requires some capital to build it together, requires resources, maybe even a dedicated employee, to really drive substantial growth that wasn't there before. So a big proponent of best practice sharing and creation of best practices. You need ideas to grow, and it's important that that person also doesn't build that best practice in a silo, but builds it over different ideas of sharing with the team, understanding if this makes sense, and then building upon that to create something powerful.
Now, Randy's been talking about going above responsibility. I've been working with some new frameworks around this, and I want to share it with you because I really feel like it's a pretty simple way to talk about this with our team members. There's a thing called expected value. And this is about taking your job and looking at what we expect you to do. And it really is the bare minimum. If you want to be promoted, you've got to go beyond expected value. And so what I ask them to do is get really clear about what expected value is for this job. Each person's going to be different, but then have new value. How are you adding new value to the organization? It could be that you're streamlining something or automating something, saving money, improving efficiency or effectiveness. It could be another area where you're like, hey, we started a program where we, are recycling, and that's saving the earth, and people feel good about what they're doing. But look for new value. And this goes for the employees too. If you really want to excel in your job, be promoted, expected value gets you the paycheck that you have now. New value gets you the future paycheck. Adding new value before you ask for the paycheck will make it easier for them to say yes. Now, your job is to do this well, do it really in a way, and share those ideas with your managers and boss. And sometimes you don't have to say things. They recognize it. Sometimes you have to let them know how the program's going, give them some data, give them some tools. All that being said, expected value, talk about it with them, but then also discuss what new value looks like. Give examples of what other people are doing to create new value in the organization so that they'll know what's expected of them. What does good look like? Well, it's up to you. Back to Randy. I want to go a little bit further in this, and I don't know how this plays out in the work and your research, but one of the things I'm constantly reinforcing with managers, because we do coaching for not just executives, but also managers, is get really good at not being a brown noser, but still being able to share what you're learning. If I'm teaching them leadership skills, I want them to be able to go, hey, I'm having a tough conversation with someone, or I had it, and I used the framework over here that Gene's program taught me. I think managers really want to hear that the investments they're making are actually paying off with the work that we're doing. What would you add to that in that same context?
It's very hard to hire new employees and get them trained up. And it takes like 6 months for someone new in job to get probably to the level where they need to be. And so I would rather make sure that the employees that I have now are more effective and bring the bar up. We're always trying to do less with more. And so constantly sharing the skills that those employees are needed to, again, not just do their typical job, but think of new ideas to make their job faster and better, whether it's through automation that will clean up things that usually took 2 weeks or 2 hours a day to do, or 2 hours a week to do. Now it could be done in minutes, to other projects that could sizably, move the business forward. I think I would rather focus on what I have and get them stronger than trying to bring in new talent and then take the time to first train them on just the day to day and then wait 6 months to a year for them to really bring those new ideas.
We're wrapping up our interview with the author of Grow. We don't have your co-author here with you, your wife. But what have we not touched on that you would like to highlight from your book?
Well, yes, my wife, Haley Ornstein, did write the book with me. She's a psychologist, but doesn't, business was not her forte. And I would say that it was fun and challenging. It was actually a 5-year process to write our book. I mentioned the first year was me writing on the train, but what I didn't mention is then we started writing together, and then COVID happened, and then I also switched companies from Anheuser-Busch to GoPuff, and so the book changed a bit from that first year to talk about skills to grow both virtually but also in person. How to work on a Zoom call and how to work in person, how to use data effectively, how to present effectively to get the yes. And it also brings in external research from business leaders as well. And so, time will tell if we write another book about business and growth. But I've been excited so far after the first year of people have read the book and coming up to me and say, I've bought that book for my team because I really value the skills that you did, or your experiences are real life, because I do provide real life experiences for every idea on how to grow. And I'm just I'm very excited and excited to share the book and its values with the world. And hopefully people will be able to use those ideas and help them grow. Because at the end of the day, my passion is getting employees to the next level.
I love it. It's a good place to wrap up today. Randy, thanks for being here and sharing your wisdom about how employees can grow and eventually be promoted and really be more valuable to our organizations.
I appreciate it. Thank you so much.
Wow, another great interview. I love authors who have really worked with their content. He worked on this book for over 5 years with his wife, and I know that that's going to make it a better book. He's really shaped this. He's been using it in his day-to-day work. And so just if you really want to do this, or maybe you want your employees to step up, go check out the book Grow. You can buy it wherever you buy books. I think the best place is Amazon these days. It's just easy for everybody, but really great conversation with Randy. So I appreciate him being here. When you think of growth and you think of leadership, think of Growth Think Tank. As always, with courage. We'll see you next time.